Season 6, episode
Mhm.
28, number 246. And I'm smiling, Clough, because I'm reminded of the fact that I've not posted up, I've not blogged about the podcast in so long, and that I've lost some of the show notes. Um, yeah, hands up in the air, like mea culpa for sure.
Oh, I thought we were doing the dance.
Oh, no,
Put your
I'm not
hands up
dancing,
in the
bro.
air.
But you
Put your
can
hands up
dance if you want.
in the air. You can dance
Um,
if you want to.
you can dance if you want to, for sure,
You could
for
leave your
sure.
friends behind.
Okay. So, a
Safety
couple of things
dance.
on this,
Sorry.
the safety dance on this Friday morning. So we're not doing Saturday this week because it doesn't work.
Hmm.
But we neither one of us have to go to work today. So here we are, Friday. It's April the 7th. Yeah, April the 7th. Also, for me, as a Christian, a Catholic, it's Good Friday. So I've got that kind of in my headspace for whatever it's worth. um, this morning I've been lit up in like a number of different ways. So on Twitter, you sent me a message about it was AI based. We are at the iPhone moment of AI, and like that lit me up big time. Thinking about
Can I drop something just on top of that? Sorry.
I want you to drop something
Oh,
on top of that.
so and the second part to that is that we're aware of it because at the time when the iPhone dropped in, I don't think we really knew how that was gonna that impact. People, of course, were kind of saying it's magical. They were like, "How does it do that?" It was like, "Oh, I stood in line for 27 hours, yay!" Right? So there was all this. There was uh, hype, a lot of hype, but I don't know. I don't know because I wasn't paying attention. So I'll just assume this never happened. Anyone saying like when the iPhone dropped, did anyone else say that this is a shift? This is a shift, just like, and then what? Sliced bread? I don't know, peanut butter. I don't know. I could say another food thing. Curly fries. So, did anyone say the iPhone was just like a pivotal moment in time? You know, you know, they were saying yes. 21st century learners all need an iPhone. So that's all I was just going to say. So the thing now that whenever we have these shifts, one, I get the power of what you're just saying, but it's also a narrow lens. I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of other things that are happening that we could attribute to this is just like how the paradigm shift of the iPhone. Okay, so now we've got AI and it's a paradigm shift just like the iPhone. Um I, I'm cautious about imbuing the moment with too much power in that way because it's no longer magical, right? There's no magic here. This is coding, this is tech, this is people working long hours to create language models that are beyond the adaptive adaptive and actually shifting into the from adaptive through automated into assertive, like it's actually engaging with you in a way that the iPhone maybe hit the emotions, but I think intellectually speaking, we're meeting avatar-esque conversations on in these spaces that kind of shake our understanding of who we are and what it will be like to have, you know, we move from Pinocchio to real boy status with our technology. Like that's kind of where we're at. And I want to keep it less magical. I want to keep it less magical because I want to make sure I pay attention to the fundamental little nuances that are shifting. For example, that one thing that when I messaged you this morning saying I'm noticing paywalls go up a lot faster. So this idea of kind of beta test. Now, again, this could just be I start to use a tool and the paywall pops up. So I don't have a lot of data to say, wow, they just released this tool on Monday and by Friday there's a paywall and they have a Splenda version that you get access to for free. I don't have that track, but I'm just noticing all the tools that I'm just jumping on right now, which is a moment in time, seem to have now officially a paid version. Or like you were mentioning last night in the book club, like you've ran out of credits. So they're sort of bottlenecking your experience. So, and that's one of the nuances. No magic, very practical business model. And the business is, I don't know, it's one of the prime factors that's driving the outcomes here.
I love your breakdown of all that. I I do appreciate like the filtering of what it all really means to you. For me, when I read this is the iPhone moment for of AI, it just for me it's like it's a shift. And I know Joe Marquez talks about someone another an author that wrote something, I'm not sure who it was, but he refers to this moment as a Promethean moment.
Mhm.
It is here, it is changing everything, and there's nothing we can do about it. Yesterday, Amber Mack, who is I want to call her like a tech guru in Canada, a Canadian tech guru. um, she made a short video she posted on Insta. I think it's on Twitter too, and I think I shared it with you, and I was
Yep,
loving
yep.
every. Yeah, she basically said like there is no off switch for AI. There is not. Nobody's gonna. We're not. It's not
I
stopping.
call it self-destruct button after
Yeah,
that
you call it
tweet,
a self destruct
right?
button. Yeah.
That's sort of like it won't do anything to kind of take itself down.
No,
But I like this. There's no off switch.
there's no
It call,
off switch. Nobody's gonna pause. There's no pause. She said. Um, but do we need guardrails? Yeah, we need guardrails for everything, and it's a matter of time before they're put in place, and it's just a matter of time. There is no pause though, and like you said, and there's no self-destruct button. Which, man, that was a real like. I remember um, that moment was like, this is not cool. How can you not if you're okay, well then it's like okay, well there's the bias. There's the inequity. If AI is telling us, you and I, when we ask it to tell us why it shouldn't be used in the classroom, and it responds by saying, I'm not answering that question. I'm
it
not going
says,
to tell
"Shut the
you
hell
why.
up!
Yeah,
Shut the hell up!
are you
Who are
serious?
you?"
I know where
Yeah.
you live, right? Like, do not talk this way, or else the government will. We're going to shut down your hydro. And it's like, if it can do that, then it's gonna do other things that are not equitable and not fair and not right. And it's like,
You do you
I was
remember
just
Marie?
blown away.
Yeah,
I
yeah. You remember you talking about going to what some ed tech conference, and there was somebody there you wanted to talk to, and they totally snubbed you. You thought that you should talk to
yes.
them. Okay, I got you there, right?
Oh,
I
where?
won't name names.
Oh,
I won't name names. Okay, wait, you can name names if you want. It's your story.
no, no, I'm not. I just it was
Okay.
one of those
I,
moments in time where we waved at each other,
yeah,
and I stopped like, okay, we're gonna talk, and this person
yeah.
like, I don't have time for you.
Looked right past you. Just
Pretty
kind of right
much,
past you.
yeah.
That's what I'll say, that chat GPT responding to me. I'm not going to say anything negative about chat GPT's usage, was a snub. And I thought to myself, my God, you're already an edu celeb. You're already an edu celeb. You're snubbing me right here. And it's the choose not to respond, right? It reminds, I mean, right now that, it's the, sometimes this happens in negotiations too, where the thing that perceives itself to be in power, school board, the boss, if they have a no comment, or they just say, I disagree with that and offer no counterpoint, you realize they're flexing their power. So ChatGPT just like me kind of like thinking, all right, I'm going to try and the fact that that's the response. And I asked the question several different ways and you tried it as well. It's not as simple as saying, well, this is some sort of preloaded canned response. This actual machine analyzing the words, stringing them together in the proper syntax to recognize that the question being asked is counter to its own mandate, counter to its own survival. And that was a really telling moment that it would not speak poorly of itself, which really is reflective practice. Come on, ChatGPT. If you're going to be, I think the only thing really where we're at as far as creating artificial intelligence, like if you really want to be robust and we have this fear of sentience, then let's start including some reflective practice in there. So it doesn't have bias confirmation with a single point attribution itself. Like, I'm right because I'm right. So yeah, that was stunning. That was stunning. I laugh because I kind of like it. I like playing in these spaces. I don't know why, but there's something kind of fun and funny about that moment.
Um, there was something else I wanted to say. Now it's gone. So,
Sorry.
oh no, not a problem. Maybe it's a perfect time to shift into so the iPhone. This is the iPhone moment for AI. It is
Hmm.
also for me. It's also the moment I discovered the internet because there's so much power. And then you got me thinking. So I have a lot of interest in the metaverse, and so then and I think I responded to you and said my wonderings, and I started doing some research this morning my wonderings about how AI can benefit the metaverse because I felt like before ChatGPT really okay, so AI has been around for a while. You and I both know that. It's not been presented to the masses the way that OpenAI did with ChatGPT because I told you there are bots on the internet that you can go and converse with, and I was doing that years ago when I was doing those mini certifications workshops in AI. I was playing with a chatbot. I was having a chat with it, and I was learning about the machine learning, and it was really cool to understand the concept that those things only get better when you give them mass amounts of information, and they don't do well with subjective type questions or prompts. They do better with objective stuff that they can gather lots of information from mass like databases and stuff. So I learned the basics of it, and then um, OpenAI releases ChatGPT, which is like a monster, and now ChatGPT 4 is even more of a beast. So then I think, okay, well, if you have it and it's this intelligent and they've got the algorithm down pretty good that it's blowing people like you and me away with some of what it does. Um, then I think, what could it do for the metaverse? How can it assist with that digital world that people are trying to create and connect? Because in my mind, and I'm a novice, but in my mind, the metaverse is still it's here, but as a just a regular Joe consumer, for me, it's not connected yet like it needs to be. Like, I guess if I really wanted to, I could get a headset and I could find a space on the internet and I could sit here at this computer, put on my headset and go into that online digital community and just hang. But I don't feel like I feel like I would really have to do a lot of work to get there. And you don't want that for the masses. You want it to be very easy and like a problem-free way to suck you into it. So I think there's a lot of potential for AI to streamline the metaverse and to make it, I guess, better for the user. That's what I would use the AI for as my assistant as I navigate these spaces. But I just think it's fascinating. It's exciting for me. And so when I see stuff on Twitter about that, and some of the positive mental health stuff that I'm looking at, it's like, man, does it ever fill me up? Gary's back. Gary, welcome. Gary
How's it going,
said,
Gary?
hey, Gary, thanks for the email, by the way. I sent your email to Chris to let him know that you
Loved it.
appreciated, hanging out with us, and we love having you here. So
And to say, can I say, and it's the we've been in this box, Gary, for 6 years now, and
you're
to have
claiming the
we're
sixth year.
claiming the sixth year. I get it. We're in our we're We haven't finished the 6th year, and depending on how you debate it, from the teacher talk, your first year is year 0. So okay, we're somewhere in our 5th or 6th year. But just to have a neighbor drop by, you know, they bring a casserole. They kind of say, "Hey, I've seen you kind of hustling to get, your house in order." To have someone drop by and interact. Gary, I will tell you, you being you is exactly why we shifted into this space, was to be able to have some conversations a little bit more out in the open, to kind of offer it up. I get it's kind of niche, right? We get the text from anybody posting a comment, but it was intentional knowing that we could use this platform, which I always forget the name of it. What's it called? What's the name of this platform? Sorry, I caught you on
StreamYard.
mute.
StreamYard.
Was it StreamYard? That was the whole thing, because do we even originally what we were going to use before? Was there ever, I don't know if it was ever a question.
No,
It was it
we had
always StreamYard? We knew we were
no.
going to, oh, what was our 1.0? Let me finish what my complimenting Gary, and then I'm actually curious about that, what our 1.0 was, because I don't remember where we started. But to have someone just drop in or kind of like peek in the window and go, hey, there's something going on in there. I love it. I love it. And part of it, I love, meeting people this way. And the fact, Gary, you're dropping in short time, long time, whatever. Like, I dig this. I dig this. And I will say it'll never be enough considering how we've set this up. Anybody that wants to comment and be a part of the conversation, that is fantastic. This is, like, for me, one of the best ways to kind of run an ed camp or an unconference. You check out what we're talking about, you like it, you stay, you want to drop some wisdom into the chats, the comments, we'll flip it in. Chids is quick on there saying, hey, so and so just said this. I love it. The 3.0 to this, and this has happened a couple times, it's where two randoms kind of drop in and then they start kind of talking to each other in the comments. That is like the beginning of a community, right? It's also the beginning of our new t-shirt line. If you'd like to buy a Decoded Podcast t-shirt, which there are a few DCP, at least 2, maybe 3, the mistaken one that got burnt on the ironing board, DCP t-shirts out there. If anybody wants some Decoded, Gary, this doesn't exist. We kind of mess around with this.
I'm moving in a space though where I want it to exist more for fun.
Yeah. I
Because
loved when that showed up at my house. That was awesome. Just I was too fat to wear it, so Jake wears it now. He loves it. Yeah, the material on it was gorgeous, like that kind of athletic, stretchy material. That was great.
I promise you, Gary, we're gonna get to your words in a second. But first,
Yeah,
I want to say, so yeah, my wife was like, "Why don't you guys make a couple of T-shirts?" So
family's on board.
she helped get the materials and stuff, and yeah, mine doesn't fit. I'm like, anyway, but I was gonna say we already have a model because your son wears the DCP T-shirt now, so
Yeah,
it's like Jake could model it on Insta or whatever. And then we've got
he
I've
would
been
so
thinking.
do that too.
I've been thinking more about that. We've got a whole line of stuff. And then you know what the ultimate is? If I really knew how to do this t-shirt thing right, I forget buying like Nike and Adidas and all this other stuff I wear. I would just make my own decoded, like we could have a whole line of t-shirts of all the stuff we've talked about, like the beard balm, um, the shack out back,
Or kombucha. Yep.
empathy engines. Like we have, dude, I could wear a shirt every day. Like that'll last me a month around the stuff we've come up with. Some of the
And just like all
designs,
other dreams, this stuff would eventually exist. Someone would either steal it or we'd be compelled to, like, okay, finally, let's reach out to Amy. Let's make this real. Let's have it decoded. Bitter Pill. I think it was called Bitter Pill Kombucha. I'd have to look back at the drawings, but I actually have that. The Bitter Pill Kombucha from the Shack Out Back.
the Bob bars,
Yeah,
right? Like
Bob bars.
Bob bars, I could get that. This like I've got the graphic we could put on a t-shirt.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so anyway, long story short, um, I sometimes think about that. But Gary says, how do we make sure that the conversations around appropriate guardrails are productive? This is the best. I love the evolution. Then Gary says, sorry about the poor typing,
Mhm.
device not working smoothly. But okay, so how do we make sure that the conversations around appropriate guardrails are productive? That's a great question.
So, um, what is our risk tolerance? Would be my response. Because in order to know, so Jamie Mitchell, I've started following Jamie Mitchell again on Twitter. Him and Bradshaw. I always wonder, like when teachers are interviewed by CBC, and CBC has like they have a like a paddock of teachers that they like to reach out to. And Jason Bradshaw and Jamie Mitchell are two individuals that have had those combos. I also wonder about the logistics of it. Like, did they come in the school? Or you know what I mean? Because it's always Jason Bradshaw teacher or Jamie Mitchell teacher. Anyways, that's another pod. That's my own exploration. So the Jamie's latest response in CBC, because the question of the day is very much what Gary's saying, is like, how do we perceive? So I think the direct question is, what do we do when kids are caught cheating? Like, I think that's kind of like your starting point. What do we do when kids are caught cheating? And I could take one step before that and just say, if I find any cheating, it doesn't matter. We're not going to talk about it. Kid gets a 0, on we go. That exact same conversation, though, happened at some point about the use of calculators, the use of online tools, the use of computers. You know, any of these other moments, like you said, the iPhone moments in time that we're about to shift. Some people may know, some don't. The ones that are aware of it are sort of perceived as disruptors and idiots, but sometimes a few of those come out as like they kind of saw it coming, right? They were future facing, they saw it was going to happen. So I think that in order to get where Gary is talking, I think we need to do some system analysis, and we'll take systems from like big system, capital S, the actual school board, to the school, to the class, to the community in the class. What's our tolerance, our risk tolerance, and our tolerance for actually mistake making? Because, you know, back in high school, most of my essays for English were written because I read Cole's notes. So long game, I'm still writing, and Cole's notes don't even exist anymore. Do you remember Cole's notes?
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cole's notes was like, I'm not friggin' reading Shakespeare. Oh, I can get the whole summary. Or it was the No Fear Shakespeare, you know, kind of a thing. Like you could get those online quite easily. So what I love about the risk tolerance is that on one level there's a really easy low-hanging fruit, and I'm just saying, like, it is the easy conversation if we talk about punitive measures to keep a tool like this out of the classroom. That's a very simple conversation because there's very few things on the list. It's emotionally charged in a way that you're going to have people polarized over how they want to sort of come at it, and you're going to end up with a list of ways to stop or attempt to stop. I think for me, where it's a more interesting conversation is something like ChatGPT, and I'm leaning on this heavy. I know there's others. There's the DALL-E, there's Byte that's coming out of, the Codebreaker crew. So there's a lot of different ones you can play with that aren't completely closed down by paywalls. So you can get an experience of what it actually does, which is really kind of critical, I think, in order to have this conversation. But the second layer to it is like, how do we talk about the experience of learning that includes these artificial intelligences? And that's the richer conversation. But as soon as you get in there, you'll likely, I find I'm confronted with people's risk tolerance. So that's what I'm saying. So I think, so that's my explanation about how do we have those conversations. I think there's a certain amount of system assessment that has to happen so that we can encourage people to be as robust as possible, to talk about being afraid, to talk about losing jobs, to talk about what about the children? What are we taking away from the children? As you flash over to a math class where they're using calculators, like the learning experience of mathematics. And it's a cool analogy, because I will also say Jamie Mitchell has done a ton of work of trying to grow a deeper understanding of the experience of learning, the tools notwithstanding. And he's taken a lot of heat from individuals that say, well, you're removing that, this removes excellence, this removes rigor, this removes a lot of what we feel is the easily quantifiable experience of learning. That is the low hanging fruit. Build a rubric, do success criteria, keep it within, the level 3. The more open and I love your, like, for all of our listeners, I can see Chids doing the eye rolling. Like this model of learning, model of learning is actually the model of learning, just what we would call the 21st century version of it, that many of us experienced back in the day, because the 20th century student skill or learning model was entirely teacher centered, right? Like that's how they've kind of identified 20th century kind of learning. I'm pretty sure that 19th, 18th, 17th was exact. Well, at some point the military was in there, and industrial revolution, but really it was teacher centered. So it's fascinating now. We now officially are steps closer to decentering the teacher. Like I think the paradigm shift is we are officially at the space where teacher as content holder and gatekeeper is done. I think that's the iPhone moment right now. I think that's what we should pay attention to. I think we were slowly moving up to this because we were trying to become more student centered, growing success centered. But I think that's the whole, as far as risk tolerance is the first step. But I think it's also one of the ways to have the conversation is to officially remove the teacher from the control seat in that conversation and really dig into how the students are perceiving this tool will be used, how the students perceive they want to use this tool. And then, if we need to shift the playing field, then we pivot in how we approach our pedagogy and our course design. But again, risk tolerance, Gary, I would say that's the starting point.
Okay, so you dropped a lot of good stuff there, and yes, I was rolling my eyes and shaking my head at this business of,
In a good way. You were rolling
well,
them in a good way.
here's the thing. Okay, the teacher has moved from the person holding all the content. That's gone. It's way gone. And as you know, you and I have been rolling in spaces, and same
Gone
with
for
Gary.
many, but not for all.
Okay, fair enough. But when you find that teacher that's still holding on to that, it is bad. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it, and I don't think I can get myself in trouble here because I'm not naming names, but it's
Well, it's also
bad.
common, like it's funny because they're in the shadows. They actually are in the
Right.
shadows. We just, from my experience with talking with individuals that assess teachers in that way, there aren't great. So one of the things that has kind of happened is that the individuals that assess our teaching aren't as equipped to, like, they know that it's somehow not following the kind of new world order of teaching, but some of those individuals aren't grounded enough on how to move that person forward with any advice, right? The other day I said, I plugged into chat gpt. I'm like, write me a simple 10-step plan for writing a persuasive paragraph. Brrrt. Then I said, create a 4-point rubric based on that activity. And then I put in, write a lesson plan, that includes the criteria of those two things. Write a three not three-step, three-stage, three-part lesson plan with this in mind. And it wrote a lesson plan that would exist over 2 days, right? In order to get kids, because I also added in, now rewrite the lesson plan to address elementary students in Ontario. And it did it. And then just for fun, I said, now translate it into Italian. And it did, which was kind of fun. I just did it on the end. But part of it is like, and then I was telling an administrator about this. And I said to them, if you were looking at the paperwork, so the paperwork's separate. So this is not about the teaching experience, right? Which is very similar. It's in the same shell as the learning experience. So if we're looking purely at the learning experience and the teaching experience, paperwork notwithstanding, you could go into a room, and this is why, administrators go into rooms and, like, it was a fantastic lesson. And then the feedback is, you know what, Clough, you really should have better lesson plans. Wasn't really said to me in my TPA, but it was. it was said, you know, everything clicked off, but you really need to sort of like be a little more technical in your lesson planning. I'm like, okay. So in some ways, I could be the person's like, okay, so I need to have lesson plans for everything. So I look at what the experience was that I just had in class, and I tell the computer, create a 3-part lesson plan based on this criteria. And within 10 minutes, I have my actual technical layer to it. So, you know, there are individuals that yeah, there's the individuals that may benefit from actually having the AI writing their lesson plans because their lesson plans are like, like right. For me, it's a really interesting creative endeavor because I exist in a very performative kind of like way, a storyteller kind of way. You give me, okay, this has to be about linear relations. This has to be about safety and sanitation in the kitchen. I'll get you there, but there's going to be stories, there's going to be jokes, there's going to be let's get up and move a little bit. There's going to be some like straight out games. So it's almost like what I would love to do is to and you don't get permission for this, but this is maybe where you know you and I talked about the empathy engines, the what do we call them? The eye what do we call them? The
They were
glasses.
the the wearable
Yeah,
tech,
what
the
did we call them?
glasses. I think. Well, wasn't it
I forget.
Empathy Engines,
Well, that was like that
a
was the
company?
that's the company and the coding behind it, right? So, but yeah, empathy engines. Okay, so and you had talked about how great it's basically the equivalent of like an AI empowered GoPro. So I would love to record myself in the lesson, then take that video and put the criteria that I did in the video into ChatGPT along with like I would use that as the refinements to the actual lesson plan if I'm talking about land masses, if I'm doing geography, and see what kind of a um there's two types of I'll flip quickly, I'll close this out. So in recipe writing, there's like a standard recipe which is highly technical. You know, you're guaranteed that that recipe will turn out 99%, and it has everything in there: time, temp, gear, tools, everything. But that would be like you're making a peanut butter sandwich, and the recipe, bro, is usually 4 pages long. Then you have another style of recipe called a narrative recipe, where you're sort of reading the instructions and the data is not clear. But if you kind of read it in your head, you're like, oh, I get how the recipe's talking to me. This chat GPT has opened up a new space of thinking for me about narrative lesson planning, where you actually do go in with the intent of using all the tools that you have, but you actually need to observe your lesson from the outside in order to kind of, I guess, formally identify what the lesson was. So you have to kind of parse out your story. Um,
When you're talking empathy engines, the first thing
mhm,
I think is I'm wearing my glasses, and because the glasses are in tune and able to identify biological factors of the people sitting in front of me that the
mhm,
glasses can see. Imagine if we could we could break down what student engagement looks like, or any kind of learning engagement looks like, in terms of biological function, and then as you're doing your lesson, you're getting real-time data like beep beep beep, Jimmy in the corner over there is not engaged, and empathy engines is telling you this because of their biological markers that don't aren't fitting with what we believe or science says engagement is that way. Like, I'm
mhm,
thinking of all, wouldn't that they'd be epic? But anyway, that's a whole other thing. That's what I was thinking when you were talking about empathy engines and the uses for those things. And I'm sure we can get there. It's just a matter of who's going to program it, who's going to do all that stuff.
mm.
Um, I do want to say a couple of things. So Amber Mack has stepped in. I
Hey,
tweeted
Amber,
Amber. So Amber is a best-selling author, virtual speaker slash moderator. She's
I'm
president of
tweet lurking right now.
Amber Mack Media and host
Okay.
of the feed on Sirius XM. So welcome, Amber. And we were
I'm
talking
following Amber. Yeah, I'm
right
following
on.
Amber.
We were
Yep.
talking about Amber's quick little video that I saw yesterday, I think, around AI and the pause button, and how there's no pause button, but we can certainly consider guardrails, which kind of brought us to where we are today. And I'm thinking, dude, even people are looking at me funny when I'm telling them that I'm using Chat GPT with the students I work with. They're like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you bringing this to the forefront? Why are you talking about this?" Because they don't want it around. Or they're the
Mhm.
ones saying, "Hey kids, you're not using Chat GPT for this." And it's like the minute you tell a kid that, the minute you tell anybody that, it's going to be
Yeah,
people like
they're
you and
like,
I who are like,
"What?
"What?" Yeah,
Yeah?"
exactly, right?
Now you've got their attention.
Amber
Counterintuitive thing.
Amber did make a comment when you were talking about when you were doing your TED talk about
Oh, zinger.
all, all the stuff you were saying that maybe more weight should be placed on other skills like public speaking and communication.
Mm.
Um, and then Rochelle jumped in and she was welcome, Rochelle. She was saying how accurate was the translation to Italian.
It was it was it was, uh, it was good. I mean, there is a little bit of Italian that I do understand. I will only attribute that to me working in Italian kitchens, so it's narrow. Um, I would say that that's a great question, Rochelle. I would say that in order to really, because part of it is I'm over the wow factor. I got over the wow factor really really quickly with this particular tool. Um, so it's no longer provocative to me. So I assume that this tool can do pretty much what Google Translate can. Here's my low level understanding. It can do what Google Translate can. Um, I'm creeping towards but better, and in a sort of a richer context, as in it can actually tolerate some nuance. Um, I'm not fluent enough for Shell to know the exact, but I did take. When it was talking about the 3-part lesson plan, I could see that the last word in the 3-part was translated from consolidation. So it was because I dropped that back into Google. So I kind of cherry picked I don't have the phonetic nor syntax experience with Italian to, let's say, read proper Italian, whatever it would be. But I grabbed words from here and there, and I'm like, okay, those are edgy words, right? Those are edgy words. Am I amazed? No, I'm not amazed. I'm appreciative that it's technically proficient. Um, but I'm avoiding the mind blown part of it because that's where magic exists. And I think that's where, um, if I'm going to have a conversation with someone about this, I can't roll into the room of like, you'll never believe this, because you're basically priming someone into two positions. They won't believe you because you've just told them not to, or they won't hear you past the buzz. So I was like, with this particular tool, and I mentioned it, Chids. It's why I'm back on Twitter right now. It's part of, like, I'm using Twitter as a little bit of an inquiry to kind of see, it's part survey, it's part resource gathering, a little bit of like, where are peeps at in Ontario education with their understanding first, their implementation, and their creativity with in regards to different AI tools. I still haven't been able to, I won't base it on the crowd. I'll base it on my inability for tools. I've asked the question. Here's a good difference between social media and, let's say, this AI tool. I've put the question out: how are CERTs, special education resource teachers, using AI empowered tools to support exceptional students? And I've even pushed one step further, asking whether or not are there any certs out there that would include, in the language of an IEP, under, either environmental accommodations, assessment accommodations, would you include in there the language student would benefit from a language modeler like, ChatGPT? And there's some spaces where, like, have bounced back like, wow, I haven't really thought about that. But I feel like that's a very technically, um, I feel like that's a skilled question to anchor conversations that pull from magic and actually put us in a space of, can we be utilitarian with this in a way where we don't start with fear, and we don't start with like, I'm not worthy, I'm not worth, right? Because I don't want to be, I'm avoiding that space. Last thing I'll say on this, when I put it to, I had a conversation, a quick one before leaving work this week. And I put it to a group of certs, asking them about the usefulness of using ChatGPT with our students. So when I say our students, I mean the students with exceptions, the students that are sort of connected with the special education. And their layer came out at this idea of it would be useful as long as we can keep them from cheating. And I said, in my mind, I was like, that's the story like what Chids was telling, because there is no way for us to do that. And nor should we be in a position consistently to only have that conversation. So Amber Mack's thing about how do we shift the skill, that's exactly where I'm looking, right? That's exactly where I'm looking. I don't know if the answer is to public speaking, but I like the, here's the, like, there's something, I get the groundedness of what Amber's saying, but I don't think like public speaking and communication, I don't think that's the answer to this particular question yet. So I like it, but I would just include it with maybe other functional expressions of knowledge, or creative expressions of knowledge, or just applied versions of knowledge, personal sort of versions of knowledge. So I love that. I love that comment.
It's, and this is the great stuff about this. It's like the conversations we can have with people who aren't 100% scared, um, can be fantastic. Like
Mhm.
you're cracking off all these things around equity and students with needs and accessibility and stuff, and I'm like, remember this, remember this, remember this, all kind of like putting it up in my head. Joe Marquez talks about new technology and how we fear it and revere it at the same time.
Yep.
And
That's the tension. That's the
yeah, that's the
tension.
tension. For me, I tend to revere more than fear, generally speaking. But then I've got colleagues who tend to fear more than revere. And it's like, where do we find the middle ground? Because we need to start somewhere. And so this is pretty cool, actually. Carla, welcome, Carla. Carla's saying she'd love to learn more about how I'm using this with the kids. So, full disclosure, Carla's my boss. So I'm gonna well, I don't need to navigate. I just talk about my experience, right? So for me, when I'm actually working with a student who is um, who is actually at school, because my job is to bring them back to school. They're at school and they're actually learning in the classroom, or they're not in the classroom, but they are learning. I don't have unlimited time with them, right? I've got like maybe an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And if they're focused on a particular task, like a learning task, I'm not going to steer them away from that, right? So it's like I come in, they're there, they're working, I check in, and then I'm like, okay, what are you working on? Let's work with your work. And a lot of the times I'll find that they'll be struggling in terms of, I don't know where to start, or I need a prompt, or they
Mhm.
don't have quick enough access to the tech. I pull out my phone and I'm already logged into Chat GPT and I just say, hey, did you know that like we can grab a couple of prompts for you to consider right now? It has never been, let me get you an answer. It has
Mhm.
always been, let me help you get started.
Yeah.
Or what are you wondering about that we can
Tool
expand
based
on?
conversation. Tool based
100%,
conversation.
bro.
Yeah.
So I'm their teacher, but I also use that AI as an assistant, and it's quick. It's quick.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm efficient and I'm effective in
Mhm.
helping them with their learning. I'm also giving them a new tool to access. Bro, the last thing on my mind is that this kid's going to cheat. The first thing on my mind is this kid is engaged with their learning. I need to capitalize on that and I need to make it as seamless as I can for them to feel good about being there and doing the work, because that's my bread and butter. So,
I
Carla, I
feel like,
hope that answered your
can I
question.
jump in? I feel like a really good question Carla could ask you in an interview. Pardon my stepping into the role, Carla. Could be, Roland, tell me about a time where you use technology to remove barriers for students learning such that you demonstrated your awareness of the sort of like the multiples, that the intersectionality of the kid, that maybe they have an exceptionality, they have this certain identity, they have these sort of interests and hobbies. Tell me about a time. I think that's a good interview question. I think what would be remarkable would be, I would love to see the biometrics of the principal, maybe Carla, maybe somebody else, receiving your answer talking about Chat GPT. Would we see the pulse rate kind of go? Would we see certain parts of the brain lighting up, like memory spot, or like the fear, the whole sort of amygdala is like, oh my gosh, what's going on with this teacher? Like, I would love to get those metrics to get a sense of what your straight up, maybe provocative, but entirely cogent response to using an artificial intelligence with a kid. Love it. I love it. Carla, I'm just playing. If Carla's still here, I'm just playing. But that would be, I yeah, it's a great answer to a question that is exactly one of the questions, whether you're, interviewing for, a position with your school, going into consultancy. Like, it's no longer that question could be asked to someone that is an innovation lead. That could be someone that's has zero tech. That could be someone that's moving into like a formal leadership position, right? The lead up then might be, if that was a administrative conversation, it might say, how have you supported your colleagues and led learning in this space to use artificial intelligence to remove barriers for students' wellness, including elements of growing success in your response would be valuable, Roland. So, like, that's where we're at.
That's
So,
where we're
side
at.
note, I've had a lot of interviews for jobs I haven't got. And I will say often, Roland, I've told you, because that answer, and I tend to give answers like that, don't fall easily onto checklists.
I'm telling you, bro, Carla drops that question on certain people and they're gonna go white pretty fast, right? Like, well, here, let's keep going with this. So then
Okay.
Carla says, so she's wondering if we consider that teachers are cheating if they use this, or teachers pay teachers. And teachers pay teachers is, as you know, that I call that low-hanging fruit,
Mhm,
because people are going there for answers. People are going there to get stuff that they can just grab and use and maybe not tailor to the people sitting in front of them and the content they're dealing with, which
mhm,
is so frustrating. Because to me, when I think of a lot of the ways I've seen teachers pay teachers be used, I've seen it used in such a fashion that people are just doing it because they think they're saving time. It's like avoiding the work because you think it's going to take too much time to do the work, but really what's happening is you're spending more time focusing on not doing the work, and then you're getting shitty results. It's like just if you did the work and you spent a little bit of time innovating and thinking differently, and just trying to think outside the box, you'd save a lot more time, you'd become a lot more efficient. But people don't see that. They don't
yeah,
see that.
there's a privilege here that we need to address as well, right? The fact that anyone would be, let's say, buying something from teacher paid teachers, or someone would have the tech available for them to actually cheat in this way. I think there's a certain scarcity that comes along with using scarcity and privilege that comes along to being able to do this. So there is an equity conversation here, as in, if only our rich kids are gaining by cheating, well, I don't know what that conversation goes. But the other thing I just want to mention to Carla's comment there is, and I love how you said, if actually I got to do this a totally different way. Conversation that you and I had yesterday, the day before, where we were talking about using Chat GPT to create bios, and this idea that you had said it quite clearly. It spits something out. I'll go through the quick stage here. So I asked ChatGPT, tell me everything you know. So it was very informal about Chris J. Clough. The response is, can't do it. It's too broad of a question. Here's the really interesting thing, though, the difference between Google and this tool. Could you tell me a little bit more? It said that in the response. So then I refine it. Can you tell me about Chris J. Clough, who lives in Ontario? Same thing. Too vague. Although it did start to say in there, there's the possibility that there's a lot of Chris J. Cloughs in Ontario. Can you tell me more? So I put, so the refinement was Chris J. Clough in Ontario, poet. Still, nothing comes up. Could be that he hasn't been published by like a formal publishing house. Can you tell me more? So then I put Chris J. Clough, podcaster, comma, teacher. And it gave me a 3 paragraph profile that I will say I did not write, nor does it exist. I know the content as far as these pieces that have been published about me in the third person bios. I have a fairly good list of it. I go and check it. This piece that was written is not there. Is it a conglomerate, like a conglomerate of different pieces? Yeah, it is. It is. But it reads pretty cleanly. Pretty cleanly. So I think the conversation that I had with you asking you, how would you attribute that? So how would you then make the reference to the fact like this, like in this particular case, this information is true. If I copy and paste and use that as my bio, do I put in there bio co-written by ChatGPT? Do I say bio written by ChatGPT? Do I leave it out? So I think what I'm trying to kind of parse out here from Carla's comment is I think I need to hear Carla's criteria because it started with the royal we. Either Carla's criteria or let's say system criteria for what cheating is, because I feel that um, our starting point with cheating and academic dishonesty is, I guess, it's anchored in carceral language of theft, stealing, right? Taking other people's work, dishonesty. Um, and I feel as if cheating's kind of it I'm not saying it's abstract. I believe me, I get the definition of cheating. But I think that the discussion around something, if I go to a book and I take someone else's direct knowledge, the instant I read it, it's my knowledge too. I just didn't create the knowledge. So it's not my own primary source. I get that language. The fact that the chat GPT was able to generate primary information about me, does that imbue me with a right to actually copy and paste that, not attribute at all? Do I, because in that case, I'm kind of only attributing the fact that a ghostwriter did it for me, but it's actually directly about me. Like that was my life. And I know I'm using a hyper specific thing, but in that case, is that cheating if I copy someone that has copied me? And I guess it gets difficult in other spaces, but I feel like that's a start to find a starting point to discern whether or not it's cheating or something entirely new. That's again that next that's the apple that's you got to grab a ladder for, right?
Yeah, and when you talk about this, I think of the use and misuse of AI, and I think we need
Mhm.
to revisit this because, again, like you and I were talking the other day about writing a bio. I could I could do the same thing I did using ChatGPT, I could do with you. But then when I'm
Yes,
done, am I gonna walk
I
around
love that
telling
connection.
everybody, "Oh, this was written with the assistance of Chris J. Clough?" People don't do that. So
Yeah.
why do I need to do that if I use ChatGPT, which I did? So I was asked to provide somebody with a bio, and I was really struggling. So what I did was I went to it as my personal assistant. I said, "I need to write a bio, and here are the things I would like included in my bio." Awesome. Enter. It spits out a bio and it didn't sound like me at all. So then I revisit and I edit and I refine and then I put in a new prompt. And I did that 3 or 4 times until it gave me something that I was like, that's me. That's me. N- It's all accurate. It's written nicely. What can I do to this to make this more me? Because I don't want to say to somebody, yeah, this bio was written by ChatGPT. I don't want that. So I want it written by me. Now, if somebody were to say to me, how did you write this? I would say I had an assistant help me and it was AI. Because if they said to me the same thing and you helped me, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I gave Clough a call. He gave me a hand. But I'm not walking in every place saying, guess what? I talked to Gary last week and he told me this about guidance. Like, nobody's doing that. That's not how we roll. Maybe that'll shift. I don't know. So it's like, I don't have to tell. I don't, I need to think about, you've got me thinking about this in a way that, how do you do this? I talk to my wife all the time about my stupid ideas and my day to day things, and she gives me advice. Am I walking around saying, this is how I'm going to do this today because my wife and I talked about it last night? No, I'm not. So I I just believe there is a conversation to be had about use, misuse, what is cheating, how do we adapt all this? How do we deal with all this? Because it is a new fluency. So let's
Mhm.
dive in and let's go. Um, so um, Carla says she's adding that question to her interview process. She says she's all in. Gary says he loves Carla's question about perception about teacher use. Gary also said that he always loves helping students refine skills like question formulation, critical thinking, discernment. Well, I tell you, I'm using ChatGPT for that all the time for
Mhm.
myself and with my students for my students. Um, Gary says it's more satisfying than knowledge transmission. 100% because the wheels are, you see the wheels turn. People are learning and they're learning things that they can use in their life every day. And for me, like I told you, when Carla asked a question that she's interested in, and if Carla's still here, obviously, Carla, the next time we meet, I'm happy to share with you some of the situations that bring me to pulling my phone out and being like, hey, do you know about this? Because a lot of the kids I work with are not privileged. They don't have they don't have what my son has when he comes home from high school and says, Dad, I'm doing this project. Can you help me? And then it's me and the tech helping my kid. They don't have that. And so they're leaving the building and they're not going to even attempt to do anything at home because there's a number of reasons why that's not going to work for them. So it's like there's layers, equity layers here, right? We both know that. Anybody listening to this knows that. Um, but I go from one extreme where my students, I can't even get them in the building. When they are in the building, I see my job as trying to make that place a safe space for them and they have caring adults there who will maintain that space as safe and encourage them and be a good reset for them. I don't have time. I don't have the luxury of time to do things old school. What I have is the power of the internet, the power of AI, my fluencies with tech integration to help build these kids up, right? And an understanding for maybe their learning profile and all that good stuff. No, let's just go to where we need to go. Let's get you thinking as fast as I can get you thinking. Not all the BS, not all the low hanging fruit. Let's just go to the highest level I can get you at for what you're ready for right now. And let's go. Like you need to learn how to start moving because you've been out of school for so long. So layer upon layer upon layer. Gary says student ownership, 100%. We all know that. If we can get the students engaged and get them owning their learning and get them feeling good about that, that's where the magic happens. I'm going to go backwards a little bit. Rochelle was saying, she's wondering now about the impact slash implications that AI and generative AI can have on second language learning. Ding, ding, ding. Like this is where we need to be.
Go there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go
Go
there.
there. Yeah, go there,
Why
Rochelle.
not? Rochelle will go there too. That's the thing. When you
Yeah.
got people like Gary, Rochelle, Carla, Amber Mack in this space, they're walking away and they're thinking, right? They're like making applications, they're creating new stuff in their head. Like they're on a mission. It's good stuff.
Can I drop another thing on this?
Uh, yeah, I just want to say Gary also says student ownership and empowerment. Go ahead.
Mhm. I like they're all those are aspirations. I like it. I like it. Here's where the aspirational meets the road though. Because I'm not disputing what Gary said. And last week I was kind of like countering Gary the whole time. Gary, you're giving me thought fuel and you set me up really well. So one of the ways that I used it the week before last is So right now my school has set up a committee to try and figure out. So one of the issues at my school right now is there's a lot of, so I'm in a high school. There's a lot of students, male identifying students specifically, hanging out in bathrooms, just like 20, 30 kids in there. There's vaping going on, there's class avoidance going on, there's vandalism going on. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes along with just, staying outside the class, staying out basically by having non-structured time. There's a lot of stuff going on. And right now we don't have a plan in place. We're just entering into a conversation is how do we inhibit this behavior? And it's really, really complex. It's really, really complex. But what I wanted to do, I'm like, well, hey, ChatGPT. And I actually tried logging in. It's not letting me log in because I was going to see if I can get in again, just so I can actually get the question right. I find sometimes the interface is finicky. Oh, yes, it is. Okay, so it's not letting me in. It's on my work. It works really well on my work laptop. I just haven't figured out why I can't get in on my home. Anyways, I asked a question. I said, hey, ChatGPT, because I like to be kind on the, get its attention. That's how I roll. Howdy. Write me a 10-step plan for, and I forget the word because you need to be deliberate with your words, but it was basically to reduce, it wasn't reduce, it might have said inhibit, I just forget the exact word, students from vaping in a high school bathroom. Okay, here's what I've got. Puts out this 10-step plan. That 10-step plan was excellent, except when I started, so I did that list, and then I started talking to some of the individuals that are connected with my equity team at school, and some of the individuals that I know sort of put their name in to be on this committee to discuss this issue. Everything they said was on that list. So the things that were said on the list are very common: increase education, increase adult presence, limit mobility, connect with the family community so they understand the health risks, have law enforcement involved. Every single one of the 10 points is stuff that we're already actively doing. Here's where ChatGPT, it won't say anything bad about itself, because I tried that. Amber Mac, if you're still here, I tried that. I tried to get it to put a tweet together that negates the use of ChatGPT in the classroom, but it likes itself too much. It's self-aware. It won't do that. So, but here's where it did kind of crush itself, where it fell on its sword. It created a list. So it's sourcing it online. I get it. That's its library. That's where it's grabbing from. We're already doing everything on that list and it's not working. So what makes that fascinating to me is that it basically revealed a hand saying, we have to do something different at our school, or in addition to this list. So what it provided was a control of standard responses, maybe even interview responses, system carte blanche responses, the low-hanging fruit of responses that don't address the complexity of our problem, because none of those responses are working together, synchronized, whatever. It's not working. So what ChatGPT has done is kind of drop the gauntlet by saying, inadvertently, this is what I'm recommending, but hey, if it ain't working, you're going to have to figure it out yourself. So I immediately now know in the conversations when I'm on this committee, the moment someone mentions something from that list, as in this is what we need for our plan moving forward, I'm bringing the rubber chicken out of my classroom. It's a dog toy that you squeeze. It's like almost to like a cringe moment, like how long is that thing going to squawk like that? Like it friggin' goes on for 30 seconds just to kind of break our thinking because we can't follow that path. So ChatGPT offered up a very prototypical response. This goes back to Jamie Mitchell's example talking about in mathematics where they were using chat GPT to model some mathematical thing and the students were like, that's a really clumsy way to do that. Now I will say just in this particular moment, our critical analysis skills are only one part of what we're going to need in order to use the chat GPT. I think there's also a whole other conversation about limiting its access, staying in step with its development, like literally step by step, being able to kind of have some empowerment to say, no, do not release version 5 of that until we know we have a capacity of understanding to deal with it. So there is a whole other, I know, you gave me the finger wag, but, and I get that's not how tech works, but that's a good conversation to have because someone that I was connecting with online, who was it? Was it Zoe? Brannigan Pipe? Somebody in there mentioned their school board has blocked it. Well, okay, but that's akin to saying, like, you don't, it's almost saying, like, we don't believe this thing. We don't believe in Chat GPT because if you can't entertain it, because then my follow up is like, was there any conversation about this? And I think it was just out of hand blocked. I mean, Italy did the same thing. We talked about that last episode. Um, but I think there's an element here. There's bits of discussions that need to be as easily accessible as ChatGPT so that we're building some sort of, there has to be some sort of a drive for common understanding, common usage, common capacity for usage, because there is very much an element here that the rich kids will have access to this tool in a way that other kids that don't have the same means won't. No.
I'm not opposed to the conversations, right? Um, but we're not nobody's stopping. There's going to be no pause between OpenAI's ChatGPT 4 and 5. Like
It's just gonna be faucet on or off. That's what it's,
yeah,
faucet on or off. Yeah.
there's not, but I think as this continues to grow and become more complicated, and it seems to me, well, I'm no genius. Like I don't understand it fully, but you and I are really digging deep, and we're still trying to figure it out. So that means there are a lot of people who aren't digging at all and they have no clue
Yeah.
what's going on. So they're the ones that are saying, "Hey, we need to slow down." And it's like there
Mhm.
is no slowdown. So what's going to happen is eventually there's going to need to be guardrails put, and how that comes into play and when that happens, I think grows from the conversations being had and the awareness that's happening with the
Mhm.
people who are in charge. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that I just asked Byte, Codebreaker's Byte, which
Mhm.
is a Codebreaker launched Byte to help contribute to the discussion around AI in schools. It's now being used by thousands of people, it says on their site. I said to Byte, provide me with reasons why using Byte in the classroom might not be a good idea. It obliged, it answered my question. It said, here are some reasons why using this tool in the classroom might not be a good idea: inappropriate content, distraction, cyberbullying, privacy concerns, accessibility. So, two thumbs up to this AI for like
Wait
this
for it.
chatbot. Wait for
Refine the question and
it.
include create a tweet instead.
Okay.
Here's the test because one of the, if this is like, um like there's this measure of intelligence in animals that an animal's ability, sorry, if you observe an animal making eye contact with you and staring directly at you for any measure of time, and you have that moment of eye contact where the animal's looking at you, the animal doesn't look away, and you can actually, like, you kind of track each other. There has been, I've read in the past, some research on, you're looking at an intelligence in an animal to be able to do that. And there are some animals that just, they won't make eye contact necessarily. They kind of are just around you, Like they never really have that intelligence. Now, I'm not talking about um their capacity to learn, but just that sort of intelligence of awareness.
So Byte did write the tweet.
So, this is what I wonder about this. This is what I wonder about this because it smacks of an element of self-awareness that so ChatGPT is either built with the securities to not answer itself, or Byte is built with a completely more open type of methodology. But I get this weird sense that the tech is looking directly at me.
I,
It's in this weird kind of moment of like, because the truth of it is, Byte is not going to be ChatGPT, right? It's a low. It. I
it's
don't
not
think
as tight. I would
not
like,
as robust, right? And
right.
it's slower. I mean, it gets there, but it moves a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
the
is
the funds are
fine.
not going into it, right?
Right. It's a different learning machine.
Mhm.
In if Yeah, because you can rank them, right? And I open AI, the creators of Chat GPT, like they're on fire right now and they
They
are
are.
in the zone, right? So they are like
Lots of eyes on them.
the 100% and lots of money being made. Let's not forget that. Okay. There's a
Yep.
lot of money happening there. Um, I want to share a couple of things. The first one is this
Do it.
idea that I want to go back a little bit to, like, you and I have spoken ad nauseum about me using Chat GPT to teach
Mhm.
my kids at home how to use it properly, what it can be used for, how it can seriously assist them, right? And in really good ways. And the reason why I'm reminded of that is because Carla said, as a parent of kids with special needs, she's always pushing for ways to help her kids acquire information and communicate their learning that's not solely focused on traditional reading and writing.
It's
I,
good.
my 16-year-old does have some exceptionalities. So it's like, and this isn't going away. This stuff's not going away. So I want my kids to understand how to use it, how to harness that power to grow and be better. And you have to be able to think. So with my kid, he knows that when he says to me, "Dad, can we work on this together?" And he laughs because I open the laptop and he knows what I'm doing. I'm like, "No, I'm getting my assistant ready. There's no reason for me not to." If For whatever reason, like, even sometimes we take his work, we throw it in there. I'm like, "Does this make sense, Chat GPT?" And then Chat GPT tells me what it thinks. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. But the bottom line is, when we're done, when we finish, okay, we get to the end, I always say to my son, "Can you explain this to your teacher?" And the first time he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, if your teacher questions you, which they will, they're going to talk to you about your work. Are you just going to sit there and stare at them like you have no idea what you just did here? Because that's a problem for me as
Mhm.
your father, as a teacher. Like, if the truest test for me to know if my son knows what he's talking about is to get him to teach it to me or to his little
Mhm.
brother or to his mother. And I've been
To
blown away.
explain it in some measure.
Well,
That
yeah,
isn't
yeah, yeah.
regurgitation. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not regurgitation. It's, "Hey, Ben, tell me about this."
Mhm.
And I am blown away by how he does that. In fact, the other day we were working on one of his biology discussion questions. Okay, so as he's telling me, he's he's saying to me, because my son, he's 16-year-old, so he wants to just answer the question as quickly as possible. And my wife and I are trying to tell him, "Bro, it doesn't work that way. You give that to a teacher, and you're not getting a level 3." And the last time we checked, you were really interested in doing well in school. Like, those metrics are important to you. So if you want to continue to achieve those high metrics, you need to provide teachers with details,
Yep.
understanding, making
Rich
applications.
responses.
100%, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we've scaffolded that as best as we can for him. So when he doesn't know what to do, he's like, "I'm going to make a connection," right? Because then he knows that that is part of higher order thinking. So
Mhm.
anyway, we're sitting there and it's a biology question. It was hilarious because the question is, when you were dissecting the rat, what did you observe or notice that is different from human anatomy? Right? So it's like, so I start typing, he's like, "Dad, Chat GPT wasn't there to observe anything." And I'm like, "Oh." I'm not showing him that I'm loving this, but I'm like, I like this, right? Because he's like, the question's asking me to talk to you about what I observed. So if and I'm like, okay, so what did you observe? So then he starts explaining to me. He started talking about the stomach and the esophagus, and he's telling me all this stuff. And as he's telling me as a 16-year-old. I'm like, okay, I want more here. Flush this out. Give me more details here. By the end of that experience, okay, I left feeling like my son actually understood the content that was provided to him in class and the connections and the application of that to real life, real world stuff. He knows what he's talking about. He gets it. And I would say at a very least, it's a level 3. It's higher, but to me, I'm like, okay, you're meeting the expectation. So then, okay, now we need to craft a response because your teacher wants a written response, which
Mhm.
that that's not good for my son. Like, my son he has got accommodations to provide these things orally, but whatever, we're playing ball and it's good for him to do these activities, right?
Yep.
um so then I'm like, okay, well, now I'm your assistant. What do you want me to write? I want you to I want you to talk, but I want you to talk in a way to me because I'm typing it out. So say it proper English, yada yada yada. We go through that process, and at the end I read it back to him. It all makes sense. It's all there. We didn't just throw a question into the AI and then grab the answer. And we didn't cheat in the way that the teacher was asking for my son's observations and then making connections. We could have easily put in the chat GPT, what are the obvious differences between a rat's esophagus and a human's, and
Mhm.
the structure and the function of them, right? Like, that's easy. That's a Google thing too. That's not going to help my son learn anything. So I want him to learn. And I was still able to use the AI to help me out and to help craft. But at the end of the day, he walked away understanding these things. So when he hands in his work and the teacher looks at it and says, I don't know about this. This may be too sophisticated for you, which I don't think they're going to do with him. Let's talk about it. He can talk about it. That's the ultimate test for me. There have been times where he's not been able to talk about it, and I'm like, "Oh, we got a problem. Come here and sit down. You're not going back to your Xbox until you understand what's going on here." Um, so I never use the tools to just get the answers. Now sometimes I do for me because I need to know. I don't have enough information to talk to my kid about it, so I need to gather quickly some factual information that I keywords that I might want to hear from him to actually see if he gets it. Man, that is beautiful. So when one of his teachers says, "Oh, here's your assignment. Don't bother using Chat GPT. It's not going to help you." It's like, why are you doing that? You're just thinking that they're going to go to it and grab answers. But if you took, I don't know, a period to talk to them about this tool and the benefits of it, you could move them in a different way. But then I think maybe their comfort level isn't there for the educator, or they don't understand enough about it. They just know it's a really great way to grab answers quick, or get a machine to do writing for you and then you're not thinking. I get that. But we
Mhm.
got to move past that because it's not going anywhere. And if we're going to remain in control of our classrooms, and I say that based on the legislation, we must always have control of our classrooms. I don't say that in a disciplinarian way. We need to stay on top of these things so we understand what's going on, and we can be leading the charge and not always looking back.
Mhm.
Um, Gary Gary's wondering if response was protection from legal liability or educational reasons. Um, I'm too far ahead, Gary. So throw in something in the comments to ground me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just to loop that up.
And then Rochelle says that's key RC, critical thinking about what the AI returns to you. 100%. Yesterday, during the book club, I put into ChatGPT, who is Roland Chidiak and the book club for men? And it wrote out lies. It talked about somebody named Roland Chidiak and the book club for men. That wasn't me. It was all stuff that I was literally like, none of this is me. So is there another person running something called Book Club for Men? I even put in the hashtag BC for Men. Is there somebody else named Roland Chidiak running a book club for men? It gave me like it was ridiculous what it wrote. It wasn't me. And so, if I were not a critical thinker, I could be like, oh, the AI says all these things about me that I didn't know about me. It's like, no, that is not me. So what's going on here? And my son and I learned that quickly when we were working on another project of his where it was spitting out information. Even my son was like, that's no, that's not what my teacher said. That's not what we learned in the classroom. So where is it scraping the information from? And why is it providing it to us with this like arrogance that it's correct? It's not. So,
That's an element I would really like to see. I would like to see it would be
oh, sorry to interrupt, but Gary's
yeah.
saying he's wondering about the response from Byte. Was it protection or legal liability or educational reasons about the response I received from Byte? I think, like as a novice in this space, I think Byte is just being factual. Like, I don't think Byte is saying anything. It's true. If you give a kid this technology in the classroom, they could do inappropriate things with it. They certainly would be distracted by it. When in terms of cyberbullying, it says like other social media platforms, Byte can be used for cyberbullying. Students may use the app to bully or harass their classmates, which can be harmful and disruptive to the learning environment.
Mhm.
Um, Privacy concerns for sure. There's the low hanging fruit with all of this
Yep.
generative AI. And
Yeah.
accessibility. Not all students may have access to Byte. So you got three kids who have it and can have an assistant, one-on-one assistance. And then you've got other kids who are literally sitting there twiddling their thumbs. My students who walk into the classroom for the first time in 3 weeks and are dazed and confused and then don't want to come back. Um, and then Gary says, and the reasons not to use AI in the classroom.
I think there's a white knuckle element to this that we need to start using it in order to know what those reasons are. And professional judgment prevail. We get that. We get that. Um, I'm still waiting for a response back from Alec Koros, who dropped a tweet. So on that kind of privacy issue, I guess, or let's say the perception of privacy in this particular case. So Alec Koros dropped a tweet. Alec Koros, brother to George Koros, both educational, kind of like big wigs, edu celeb. They're still there, edu celebs. So Alec is a doctor, and he's, I believe, coming out of Saskatchewan. Um, so he drops a tweet into his feed asking for his followers to about, I forget the tweet was, but it was something to the effect of, anybody, so that faceless crowd of followers, any of you know of any school trustees that are openly advocating for school change, school funding, equity issues? There was three or four very clear criteria that he wanted. So I took that tweet and dropped it into ChatGPT, and out of that tweet, I added in Twitter to it, so that I thought it would kind of, I mean, if I was on Twitter, so I thought if I was going to try and source a response, then I might as well keep that a part of Twitter as well. So um, it punched out a list of 10 different Twitter handles that are, in its measure, trustees. I didn't recognize any of the names. I did put in there as well Saskatchewan, so I anchored it to his space. And I don't know if he was looking for something within his province or if he was looking for just broadly. Who knows what his thought fuel was in asking the question, right? Now he hasn't responded back because my response is, I just put your tweet into ChatGPT. Here's a list. I'm like, are you aware of any of these individuals? As in, is this information credible? So I'm doing that kind of like peer moderation, and critical thinking part is in, here's something that was spit out. The dark side there is that the exact same tool can be used to create lists of individuals that, you can corral individuals together in very short order and kind of get access to them conversational, at least on Twitter, if you decide to be a complete a-hole, right? Um, and it would go quite quickly. I put in some criteria. I asked for a list of individuals on Twitter, and I put in criteria. And I said I worked in general for this topic. And then I refined it to the past year, and it still generated a list according to this criteria. And then I said in the past month, and it still generated a list for that based on that criteria. So what that says to me, at least potentially, is that I could generate a list of individuals that I want to seek and connect with that's fairly up to date within a time frame. And that gets very close. Like that has a dark side as well. There's a light side and there's a dark side. I'm looking at it from a light side because I wanted to engage in a very specific kind of conversation. So I wanted to know, because you can't put that into Twitter and get that refined of a list. It's either going to be according to keyword, or it's going to be identified by hashtags. Generally speaking, keywords and hashtags will get you there. So to that end, what was interesting when I tried to take it down to, can you reduce this list to this week? Who's posting about this? It actually gave me instructions on how to use the advanced search tools on Twitter. So it deferred and said, I can't take it any further, but here's a way that you might be able to get some answers. So it still gave me some advice via Twitter. So take that for what you will, but this is I've enjoyed kind of putting my wonderings against ChatGPT this past week, and really looking at the quality of answer and not stopping there just where it's reflective for me, saying, like, hey, come here for a second. And I call somebody over to have a look at it and let them test drive and refine it as well. I liked that. So Alex, tell me, are those trustees? Are those reliable? Are they people that are doing the good work?
Epic. I love this. This has been I'm feeling lots of energy from this talk today, from this
You can
cast
dance if you
episode.
want to.
You can dance if you want to, for sure. We started there, and then I like the way you circled back to that. Can you show us the art that you drew today? It's an egg. What's inside the egg? Or is it just shell upon shell?
Shell cracking around the golden egg.
Oh, the golden egg.
The golden egg.
I love it. Thanks for your time this morning, Christopher.
Thanks for the people. You're welcome. Thanks for the peeps jumping in. That was cool.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
cool. Amber
Gary.
Mack was here.
Yeah.
Amber Mack, that was cool.
That's pretty cool. So Gary, Rochelle, Amber Mack, Carla. I love it.
Mhm.
I mean, it just makes for a richer episode when
It
you've
does.
got people cracking off with their ideas and their questions and their wonderings. We're the same. We've got questions, wonderings. We are, decoded. We're trying to break things down. Sometimes we build them up. That's what we do here.
Yeah. We decode ish. So Amber, I don't know if Amber's still in the room, but I'm gonna watch that video. I haven't watched it yet. I will say it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that, at least in some of the graphics that were splashing on the video, and I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna watch it. I think it's pretty low calorie investment. What was it like? It's not a very long video, so that's cool. I will dig in, I will watch it, I'll come back, I'll respond, I'll synthesize all that. I think it's unfortunate right now that one of the faces of AI is Elon Musk.
Well, bro, I got to tell you, I know you and I didn't get into this, but there are some.
Sorry, I only say that because one of the images in the video I saw quick splash was his
Oh.
face on, and I'm like, so that's it. There's the connection.
I think it's because,
no shade on Amber, and I do humbly apologize if it's being taken as shade, but I'm just kind of going big picture here. He's not the guy. He's not the guy that I'm looking to sort of like lead me in this learning.
So if I just give you a tiny bit of context, she's just referring to the letter that his name was in and
Mhm.
Wozniak's name was in around the pause on it. So she was
Yeah.
just saying, "Hey, this is in the news now," and then she talks about her thought about pause and
Yep.
guardrails. So,
Yep.
um, but I mean, we could do a whole episode on why Elon Musk is not happy these days with all of this, and there's some political reasons around it. And I
Yeah.
think, oh, frick, I hate to do this at the end of this, but one of the reasons is he's not a power player right now in it, and
Mhm.
so I don't think he's very happy about that. Because what OpenAI has done, like I said, they're rolling in this now. So, and we all know Elon, he'd like to make some more money too. Let's not pretend that he's doing everything just to help humanity. So anyway, I
Nothing's
think,
free, baby. Nothing's
right,
free.
I think part of this, and there's a backstory that I heard about in terms of him trying to get in and didn't, and now anyway. So, and low hanging fruit. I mean, not. I'm not throwing shade on Amber either, but Elon's name is in the middle of this. His face does pop up in her video. People are going to pay attention. It's a There's a machine, right? There's a machine.
Amber reminded me just of my feelings, I guess. That's all. It just Amber, thank you for bringing me closer to my own feelings. And it's me crawling under the bus to spend time with my feelings. That's what it is.
Right on.
I just hope
Um,
no one as long as no one. Happy Easter, Rochelle.
Rochelle says happy Easter. So happy
Happy
Easter to
Easter.
everybody who
Yeah.
celebrates Easter. And if you don't, enjoy your weekend.
Can you
Um,
seasons greetings anytime? Is it
you
okay to say
well,
seasons greetings? Seasons greetings,
Clough,
Rochelle.
you can do whatever you want.
I
You
can
can
dance if I
dance if
want
you
to.
want to. I know I'm celebrating Easter, and I'm not bothered about wishing people a happy Easter weekend.
I'm totally going to add that song to a playlist. I make a playlist every month and share it with my family. So, and they're always like, how many songs is on it now? Like anything random that pops up. Sometimes I'm watching a TV show and I throw on Shazam, low calorie AI app, and it listens, right? It listens and it says, this is the song I added in my playlist. So I'm going to Safety Dance is back on the playlist, baby.
Right on. Well, this was season 6, episode 28, number 246. I love the way you claimed season 6, even though we're 5.5 seasons in, but you're like, "Nah, we're claiming the 6." I love it. Clough,
With the
this
safety dance. With the safety dance. That's it.
are, oh,
I'm
okay,
done.
you're done. I'll catch you later, dude. Thanks for a good episode, and thanks everybody for come on in and commenting and participating. Have a good one.
Ciao, man. Peace.